What's up, ladies? It is your girl Carla, and welcome to the Quiet Revolution. For those of you who do not know, I am a life coach, and I help mothers to rediscover who they are, their life purpose, because let's be real, in motherhood, we tend to take care of everybody but ourselves, and tend to place everybody else on a pedestal except ourselves. And that can be very deterring, especially when you get to a middle age and you have nothing else to give. You don't know where to go. And if you're not in a relationship, it can be really hard to find yourself. And I've created this space so that way we as women, we have a positive place to come back to when we're feeling down. We have a place to come back to without making it seem like we're always the victim. Just because we're single mothers doesn't mean that we're victims. Just because we're married single mothers doesn't mean we get to play the victim, because at the end of the day, we get an opportunity to choose the life that we want. We get an opportunity and we only have control of creating the life that we want to live. And I would like to be the first to tell you that, okay, maybe I'm not the first to tell you. I just want to tell you that we do not have to go through a lot of the things that we experience in life if we can change our mindset. Okay, so today, I want to talk about communication today. And why? Because to me, communication is like the single most important thing in a relationship that creates foundation. Your communication skills or lack thereof is literally the foundation to any relationship that you will ever have. Do you guys agree? I agree. Okay. So, what is communication? I think a lot of times we like to chop communication up as just talking. Communication is more than just talking. Communication requires self awareness, it requires listening, it requires um, understanding of your delivery. Okay, it requires perspective. You have to have an open mind and open perspective when communicating with people, because you're not going to always agree, right? It requires um, it requires the ability to have depth, emotional intelligence. Like, communication is so much more than what we think it is, just talking, you know? And I think that it's important to understand that, because when you interact with somebody, and especially with somebody who does not have the perspective, they can only see from like one perspective, then it makes it really hard to, express your perspective in things, right? And so when we talk about communication, it's really important that we understand the multiple facets of communication to be able to be intentional about how we communicate in the future with other people. Okay. And it's important to be able to have a better understanding of how to communicate and what communication is, because communication is what creates trust between you and another person. It creates not only trust, but it creates um, oh my God, intimacy. Okay, to be known, to be able to share parts of you, vulnerable parts of you that other people may not know, and to be understood. You know, these are the things about communication that we rely on to have a successful relationship, and we cannot have a successful relationship if we are not communicating. Communication is not assumptions, and I think that a lot of times we assume people can read the room. Okay, and baby, people can't even read books these days, so we should never assume that people can read the room. Therefore, we should never assume. Now, this topic came about because I was talking with my siblings about communication, and my sister-in-law was stating how her family grew up communicating, and they literally would just say the thing. Sometimes it ended up in big arguments and blowouts and everything, but after everything was said and done, everybody was cool and level-headed again. And I was asking her, what the difference is between how her family communicated and how my family communicated. And she said that she finds herself having to be more mindful of the things that she says before she communicates because she doesn't want to offend anybody, you know. And I thought that that was fairly interesting because growing up, anytime anytime we would say something and my mom would be bothered by us, she would literally like ignore us. And it's just like, hello, is this thing on? You know? And obviously, I think that when you look at both communication styles, I feel like that there is positives to that, and I also think that there's negatives to both of them. You know, I think that it's appropriate to being able to talk about the things while things are, you know, are going on because it allows you to say how you feel in that moment, you know. But I also understand how important it is for some people to be able to sit on things, to think about that, about to be able to think about things prior to actually communicating what's going on. But the problem was that with that becomes how long is too long, you know. Now me, I would like to I would like to think that I'm a really good communicator. I love to talk to people. I love understanding people. I love expressing myself to people. But I find it very important for people to understand my perspective and where I'm coming from. And it's very hard for me to sit on things that are bothering me like days on end at a time. It really bothers me for you to not be able to tell me how you feel. Whereas um, I understand, like, I've been in relationships before where my partner could not come to me and talk to me about things because he really needed to sit and think about what he wanted to say before he actually said it. And I respect that a lot, you know. And so I do believe that, like, both sides have their value, but I also think too much of anything could be a bad thing because you could really hurt somebody by either ignoring them or, you know, not talking to them for a few days on end at a time, or even just like blowing up and saying some shit that you don't really even mean, you know? And so this is kind of what prompted this thought that I had that I wanted to really talk about. Now, with that being said, I have me some notes here because your girl can run her mouth, all right? And I really don't have that kind of time today because I'm actually at work, you know? And so, one of the things that I believe that strong communicators do, or some of the things I believe that strong communicators do, is they listen to understand. Okay, when you listen to understand, it 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 allows you to see the perspective of somebody and what they may be going through. Because remember, communication isn't just talking; it's perception. Okay, and when you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it allows you to really be like, you know what, I can see where you was going with that. I can understand why you mad. Okay, maybe I kind of fucked up here. You know, it also they also strong communicators also say what they mean, and it can be hard sometimes to be on the receiving end of somebody who says the things that they mean, because if you are not emotionally mature enough to handle a conversation or to receive feedback, whether it's critical feedback or, yo, you did this to hurt my feelings and I don't like that, the receiving truth, it can be really hard to hear that. And a lot of times people are um, they're very selfish in how they communicate, in the sense of they're selfish without understanding the full perspective of what's being said, or what's being said, excuse me. Okay, when you are in a relationship with people, it's very important that you are able to express the things that's needed to be said, because there are so many times, especially as women, we tend to I feel like in the beginning, we tend to be very reserved with the things that we say out of fear that we may come off as too aggressive. We may come off as being too emotional, too needy. And with that comes with that with doing that, a lot of times we are teaching the other person that we don't have a voice. So when we get to a point where we want to say something, a lot of times, because we've not consistently showed up and communicated our needs or communicated our feelings or expressed how something hurt our feelings, we're not really taken seriously because we've taught our partner at this time that we don't typically, this is not typical behavior for us to share these things with us. And I think that this is the reason why a lot of women have issues with their partners, because they're not actually communicating what is being needed. Okay. Um, Another thing is that I find that a lot of people, and this is not necessarily catered just for women. I think this is great for everybody to hear. But a lot of times you have people who will not communicate needs or things. They don't want to bring things up just to keep the peace. And I've never understood that. Because bitch, is it peaceful for you to sit in somebody else's shit and you don't want to say anything because you want to keep the peace? How peaceful is it for you to know that somebody is not respecting how you feel, or somebody's not respecting your boundaries, or nobody's wanting to hear how you feel just because they're going to get irritated with you? Like, that's not peaceful. I've never understood how that was peaceful. And maybe somebody can explain it to me, but I know for me, it's very hard to constantly be the bigger person, and I'm constantly having to swallow how I feel just to make you feel better, and that's not fair. And that's not really love. It's not really respect. It's not really communicating, because you're constantly sweeping things under the rug to keep the peace. Like, that does not, it just does not feel good. I've been there before and I don't like it. And so a lot of times we will be the peacemaker, in order to save drama happening in the relationship. And that's not open or honest communication. You know, when I think about communication, I believe that we need to be speaking and sharing every aspect of how we feel. We need to be honest with each other. We need to, let people know when they've offended us. We need to let people know that they've crossed boundaries. We need to let people know sometimes that it is not okay for you to talk to me like that. And it's not being confrontational. It's you sharing with somebody that you deserve to be treated a certain kind of way, you deserve to be talked to a certain kind of way, you deserve to be included, your emotions and your needs are also worthy of being acknowledged as well as theirs, you know? And it's important because in any relationship that you have, it's not fair to a person to not know about themselves if you want them to be better for you guys. You know, one of my exes, every time we had an opportunity to transform our relationship into something greater, he would refuse to talk about things, or he would want to sit, he was never ready to talk about things. And we never spoke about anything. He would just sweep it underneath the rug like nothing was going on, like there was not things that needed to be talked about or addressed. And for me, I'm not the type of person who's going to beg and push you to talk about anything. However, in the meantime, we still have, it's hard for us to grow from one place if we've not acknowledged the last 4 months of things that's come up. And that's what I found that we did a lot. And it was really hurtful because I felt like that relationship could have gone so many places, and we could have been more than what we ended up being. But because he was so afraid to communicate and he didn't really have a lot of experience with communicating, it really kind of crippled our relationship, you know? And I do realize that growing up, our family roots create a lot of our experience and our habits when it comes to communicating. Just kind of like I was saying, like with my family and my sister in law's family, a lot of people, you know, their parents really never really communicated with them things or allowed them to communicate, especially like in the black household. What mom and dad says goes. You better not question me. I don't want to hear what you got to say. My word is the final word. And although I do believe that out of respect that those things should happen and occur, I also feel like out of respect for the child that they should be allowed to voice and communicate things, because that actually teaches your child. It teaches them how to communicate with other people, you know, and because we have been raised, a lot of us have been raised to be the bigger person, um, to, allow people to be them, and don't really, talk about things. Like, it's kind of hindered our ability to really be honest about things that we feel. And if you really ask me, I feel like a lot of that um, it really plays into our self worth. I believe that your ability to communicate is a direct reflection of how well you value yourself or you see your worth, you know? So those are just a few things that's like come up for me because I realize also that we don't have the ability to say things intelligently sometimes because we allow ourselves to get very flustered. People who do not have strong communication habits or practices, should I say, are people who assume things. People like to assume things. What else? They like to. I have some notes here because I'm already all over the place, but they expect you to be able to read their mind. Um, they go silent. That's something else that I experienced. Anytime I want to talk about something, I've had friends, I've had coworkers who, or even exes, who would just completely ignore me. And it's just like, why can't you talk to me? I'm not that confrontational. And if anything, I believe that being able to communicate things allows us to hash things out. And because you want to hide behind communicating, it's not really fair to the other person because now you're passing assumptions on me about who you think that I am. And that's also not okay. You know, um, Something else that's really big too that people who do not communicate very strongly do is that they rehearse responses in their head. I know you guys done that before. Like I've done that so many times, like not recently or anything, but like when I was really sitting with myself and learning a lot of my bad habits. Um, those are one of the things I would do. Oh, you know what? He bet not say A, B, C, and D because I know you lying. Girl, why? Like, I know in the moment it's so hard not to just do that, but when you really sit with yourself and you learn why am I triggered? Why do I have to why am I giving this person more time in my mind than they need to? You don't have to do that. You really don't have to do that. What else? Attacking a person instead of the problem, that's actually a really big one for me. You know, um, I find a lot of times that because people, excuse me, do not like um, people. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. People don't like when you start touching on things that trigger them. People don't like it when you start touching on the things that they don't want you to see. Their flaws, their insecurities, their ego trips, their lack of whatever. People don't like that. And so when you bring things up, instead of addressing the problem, they start attacking you. And I think it's so important that we know that those attacks are not a reflection of who you are as a person, but it has everything to do with the individual who feels seen. That's it, that's all. And so being able to, I think that it's important that we really sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, like, man, am I that person? What type of communicator am I? Do I speak aggressively to people? Now, I know that I can. And this is something that I've been working on for years. Am I perfect? Of course, I'm not perfect, but I am so much further along where I've been or coming from where I've been from, and I'm very proud of that. But because most people don't know how to be honest with themselves and be able to identify how they communicate with other people's, it's hard for them to see sometimes that they're the problem. You know, are you the quiet type? Are you the type of person who avoids conflict? Are you the type of person who gets emotional? You know, Becoming an emotional communicator is also not cute. Y'all, lady, girl, we have got to do better. Okay? The pop off is not always cute. The pop off is not always what's best for us to be displaying because also, too, we have kids. Some of us have kids, you know? And What type of example are you setting for your children if you're getting emotional and flying off the handlebars every time somebody says something to you that you don't want to hear or that you don't like? Or even if somebody is trying to approach you and say, hey, you said this and the other, like, where's the accountability in that? That's important. And so I'm not trying to make this super long. I feel like I've already gone way too deep. But all in all, I would like to challenge you guys to question, how do I communicate? Do I have high intelligence when I communicate? Do I have the patience to communicate with others? And when I say communicate again, it's not just talking with others. Do I have the understanding and the depth to see both perspectives? Do I have the ability to deliver a message without offending somebody? And the more important thing, and this is something that I am still working on, am I delivering a message in a timely manner that's not offending people? Because if you are saying something in the timing that is not appropriate, it can still be deemed as miscommunication because it doesn't land correctly. The message doesn't land in the way that it's supposed to. So how is your delivery? You know, are you listening, or are you just listening to respond? You know, these are just things that are on my mind, and I would really like to know, like, what type of communicator are you? How do you handle conflict? Do you feel like you have a lot more work to do? Can you sit with people and have a conversation with them and hear what they're saying without without feeling attacked? I want to know. Anyways, ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me, and let me know what you think.